Okay, so this is a really rough recording, and I think I'm going to need to split these things up into stuff that's about the technical side, and then specifically education practice. But I wanted just to do a recording because the current version of Node Noggin is available, and if I share it with people, I just want to say, well, go on, if you're up for watching a longer video, then here's one that explains some of the things. The plan is to have both like text-based documentation that's really clear on how you use Node Noggin and the scenarios that it will support education practice, and a video version. I'll probably end up using the text as kind of some of the script, so that you've got those two options. So I know a lot of people don't want a video guide, they want just like, give me the steps. And Node Noggin is really straightforward to use, but I guess I want to just give some technical background for those that are interested. So Node Noggin is a local first, decentralized, peer-to-peer, in-person collaboration tool. So it's a tool for you to use in person with a group of potentially students or other collaborators to capture and contribute text, notes, which we call nodes, or ideas in a space that is completely private, completely anonymized, and the data is not stored on a cloud anywhere. And that works through a number of principles, but effectively we're using a WebSocket server to pass the data between browsers, and so it's all stored in your local browser. That means that, you know, using things like private browsing mode and other things like that, it won't store the data, because that's designed to not store anything, and the data is quite ephemeral because it's only local storage. And some browsers like Safari, which I'm going to do the demo on in a minute, actually delete local storage after 7 days if you haven't visited that domain. So and in this instance, just so you know, if you go to the URL nodenog.in, so Node Noggin, that will take you to a hosted instance of the app. And so that's online, and if anyone who creates or joins a microcosm with the same name who's online at the same time will be able to share and collaborate and see each other's notes, which we call nodes. But you can, obviously, because it's free software and because it's local first, you can run it on your own. You can build and run the app completely locally and run it just on your local network. And again, that allows you to kind of have another level of kind of privacy and control as you want. But in this instance, it's a hosted solution. And like I said, the way that it works is that you will join or create a microcosm, and anyone else that joins that same microcosm at the same time as you will then start peer-to-peer synchronizing your notes. Your notes can only be edited by you, and you have the ability to delete and remove your notes at any point. And so long as the other person, well, when the other person comes online, those notes will be removed from everyone else's devices. It's not designed to be a remote tool that you use without a live component. It's designed to be facilitated as part of a live discussion, because the way that it tends to work is this is about idea generation, thrashing out some concepts, and also allowing everyone in the room to feel like they can participate, even if they are not the kind of person who in the studio or the classroom puts the hand up, but they've got something to say. And what we found in the research is that more people contribute, so we see more feedback on student projects, and more feedback for students on their work. We've seen students giving more feedback on processes of modules or projects they've been developing, and getting kind of quick feedback from staff or mentors on issues that they kind of raised that they didn't feel comfortable raising until they put it into this private space. And we've seen that turning into further conversation, so seeing what people are putting in, and that conversation in the studio starts. So this is not a replacement for a tool like Miro, Mural, Padlet, or any of those kind of things. They are very different productivity tools. They're cloud-based, obviously. They don't respect privacy in the way that I think is required if you're using this in a way to extend your thinking and to bring together a community of practice. So hopefully that makes some sense. But let me just show you how it functions. So I'm obviously just showing it on Safari because it's just easy for me to do. So what you do is you go into your session that you're working with your team or your group of students, and they visit, in this instance, Node Noggin. There's one hosted solution. You could be hosting it somewhere else if you wanted to. And they would click join or create microcosm, and they would just type in a name. And so the nice thing about this is because there is no logins and it's obviously time sensitive, we can just say to students or your team, okay, the microcosm name is called Southampton. So there's no login, there's no QR codes to scan. You can just instantly start up and running. And at this point, I land in what's called the collect view. This view is where you can collect your thoughts, your notes in Node Noggin really, really quickly. And this view is predominantly designed for two purposes. One is that it works really, really well on mobile phones because it's just a skinny view. So I'm just adding a note there, or again, what we call nodes. And at the moment, you then tap into there and you just type in and you can keep adding as many as you want, and you can type in what you like. Okay, and so this is your independent view of your nodes, and you can just keep adding and adding. And there's some UX things here that I know you might have noticed around autofocus, around text selection. It sometimes is a bit janky. It seems sometimes better on a phone as well, which is kind of weird. So you can see here it does some strange things, but it's not massively problematic. But some people found they were struggling. The other thing to say is it's designed for like working in facilitating a workshop or an activity for like 40 people, because it gets too much. And also it's designed for kind of 30-minute sessions, you know, or 30-minute kind of, and you can then create more microcosms. So what we often do is we'll have like a particular set of prompts or questions that people will need to answer or want to think about, and we want to get everyone not only talking to each other, capturing that into Node Noggin. And so they tend to last for like 30 minutes, and then you'd create like another microcosm just as quickly to capture the next set of notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just join from my phone. I'm using Firefox on my phone, just because, again, we're both online at the same time. Let's create or join, and I called it Southampton, didn't I? Done. Okay, so I'm just going to add a note on my phone. And so, yeah, everyone's kind of just talking, conversing, but also capturing. So some might be doing it privately because they want to write something, but they don't feel confident to speak about it. But they know that none of the data is all anonymized, it's all private, and it's not attached to anyone. We have no way of knowing who's written what unless they identify themselves. And so, you know, some people will just kind of be chatting, but then they'll add something on their phone. And depending on the size of the group, depends on how anonymous that really is. You know, if you've got a team of 4, you know, it might become quite clear who's typing what at some point. So, you know, it's a trust-based, it has a level of trust-based system as well. But in big, you know, in big student groups where you've got 30 to 40 students commenting on a student project, they feel more confident to be a little more critical. Not critical in a horrible way, but they feel that they can put that there without there being some sort of animosity or issue. Also, it allows the voice, you know, again, of the lowest paid person in the room to be at same volume as the highest paid person in the room. You know, even if everyone is, again, having conversations or shouting out ideas aloud, this space allows for a bit more of that. So if we now jump on Safari to the spatial view, what you can now see here, and I'm going to use my trackpad to zoom out a little bit, is you can see the 2 nodes that I created on Safari. And this is the one that I created on my phone. So I can't edit that node at all because it's not mine. I'm not allowed to edit it. Obviously I can edit these ones and I can add more text. The other thing just to note as well is that I can color code my nodes. And so often with that, what I tend to do is if you've got like sort of 3 prompts, get people to use a color for each prompt. So then you can kind of pick them out and identify them. Let me change the color of my phone one there. I can go to the spatial view on my phone. It works pretty well, but it's not really, the spatial view is really designed for the projector, the big screen at the front. And one of the reasons that is that people in the collect view can focus on their own commentary, adding stuff, so they can put stuff in really, really fast without being distracted by this view where things are moving around, where text is appearing in real time. That can be distracting. But once you start to project this, and maybe you wait a few minutes for things to start going, and then you put this on the projector, then what you see is the groups are looking up at the spatial view on a big screen, and they start to look for things that they can then respond to. So they see ideas, comments, they think, oh, okay, I really like, I chime with that, and they add in their own additional commentary, and so in the workshop we did recently, we had loads of people in, but suddenly, this spatial view was flooded within minutes of people's ideas, and then they start to respond to other comments they see on the big screen, the projector. Of course, when you're in the spatial view, you can obviously add, do other things, etc. Couple of other things to note here, just so you know, we can also attach emojis to a note, and at the moment they are independent, but what they should be really doing is being attached by default to this note, to whichever node you created it with, so that it stays with it. I quite like the idea of unpin them, so I do quite like that at the moment, but they are, because they also scatter a bit weird, and sometimes they get stuck behind, like now that's under there, which is fine if I can move that node, but if it's under here, yeah, I can't get to that unless the person who created the other thing moves theirs, like so. Yeah. Anyway, so what's else to tell you at this point? Well, there's only 2 other things really at this point. Is you can export your data to JSON. You can't take anyone else's data out at this point. We're going to build in hopefully a consensus method that for everyone that's online will say in the room, oh, okay, right, what we want to do is we want to because this is quite ephemeral data, but maybe we do want to keep it, and we want to make sure that it doesn't get lost because it's in local storage, and that could get lost, etc. And everyone's in the room. We want to have a consent method where you can say export to JSON, and rather than it then just downloading yours, there'll be some prompts so that you could download other people's. But they could also say, no, I'm not happy with my data being saved off as a JSON file. So there's that, and then the other thing is you can say delete my data, and what that does is that is deleting your local storage files, so notes for that microcosm. It doesn't delete the microcosm because this person is still there, and there might be others, but it's taken away the notes that I've made from this device. And then if I want to go and join another microcosm, I can go back home and I can add, and of course I've still got access to this one, but currently I will only see other people's data unless they delete it, obviously. But my data has been removed, so I don't lose access to the microcosm itself. But then if I wanted to create another one, I could just do another one. So, SO23. Now I've created a new one. Yeah, and there's some focus things to do and some tap things to do. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell. That's a bit of a technical and how to use video, but I thought it might be useful. I don't know how long that video is going to be, but I will get it on YouTube.